fans, and welcome. In today's episode we have a frame from the usual scumbags, crack and fail themselves, Cannondale. Now this frame was sent to me by a chap who bought a Hambini BB, which is this one, a PF30 to BB30 for this frame. Now when he put it in, he got really crap bearing life, and spinning this, which we'll do in a minute, we'll go through some of the issues with it. So without further ado, let's talk about the frame. So this is a Cannondale Super 6 Evo frame. It's black. General normal carbon construction, as they are most of the time. Some features, I don't know why Cannondale do this, mainly because they're fucking idiots. But they've labelled the bottom of the bike BB30, but it is actually a PF30 bottom bracket. So that's 68mm wide and a 46mm aperture. What do you call them? Headset bearings are run of the mill. I think they're about 43mm, something like that. Anyway, there's not really much to talk about there. Now, the usual chap who does my NDT for me, he scanned the frame. And as much as it pains me to say this, he said the frame quality was excellent. He said it was really, really good. No voids, no cracks, no bonding, nothing. So in that respect, well done to Cannondale. Credit where it's due, so you've done well there. Shame about the rest of the world standards that you do, but there you go. Yes, it is paining me to speak about this. But anyway, joking aside, so they've done a good job with this frame. Apart from the bottom bracket. Now the bottom bracket, which is here, if I spin the drive side, probably can't hear it. If I spin the non-drive side, it sounds gravelly. So there's your first clue. The next clue is, if you look at the striations on the bottom bracket, we've got heavy marks on that side, none on this side. So if you then look at the bike frame, so what I have here are little gauges to help me measure. So normally I would just use a laser to check it, but to be able to show you guys how this sort of setup works, I'm going to show you with these discs. So these discs are just different sizes. So the diameter of this side, 45.98, halfway across it becomes 45.96. That one is 46.02, and that is 46. So in an ideal world, you want the 45.96 to go in and the 46 to not go in. So there's your go and no go. So if you try this with, on this side, so this is the non-drive side, 45.96, not a cat in hell's chance of that's going in. So immediately you could tell that's undersized. Okay, if you did the same deal on the drive side, .96, so that has gone in quite a fair amount. So I know a Hambini BB will probably clear that, but because this is this guy's frame, we'll fix it. Okay, so that is the issue. The other thing is misalignment. So the misalignment between this side and this side is really very good, and it's quite unusual for a Cannondale because most of the ones I see are really, really bad, but this one's not too bad. So whoever's made this has obviously done a good job. Yeah, so the misalignment is effectively nothing. So all it is a cleanup of the holes on either side. Greetings from Guantanamo, also known as Hambini headquarters. Everyone's favourite part of the show, PowerPoint. Now, this PowerPoint is going to be a complete and utter fucking letdown. It is going to suck more than a porn star. I was looking so forward to this. 25 years of hard-on wanking for this moment. And what's happened? Well, the title says it all, really. The greatest roast in history gets fire extinguished. By everyone's favourite 5-year-old, that's me, that's Hambini. So yeah, so I was so looking forward to this, and then it just like turned to shit, because I thought this frame was going to be utterly bollocks, and it's not really that bad. Okay, it's not to spec, but it could be a lot worse. As per usual, first of all, a shout out. Now, a chap from Sweden sent me one of these, which is a tablet thing to draw on. But due to... and some chocolate. And this one, salted licorice chocolate. I haven't opened this one yet, but I am told by many people this is a bit of an acquired taste for the Nordic chocolate connoisseur. Anyway, thank you very much to that individual. He knows who he is. But yes, anyway, going back to this. So this is the tablet thing that I was going to draw with. Unfortunately, due to my lack of computer skills, I don't actually know how to plug it in properly. Or when you plug it in, I'm not sure how to draw. Anyway, hopefully this will be resolved for the next episode. But there you go. Now, if you're at all annoyed by me ranting about this and think it's irrelevant, go fuck yourself. Right, Cannondale. They are owned by the Doral Group, and I believe they are a Canadian company. And they also own Schwinn, GT Fabric, and in the UK they have a company called Cycle Sports Group that does their distribution and stuff like that. If you have kids, you probably have heard of their car seat division called Maxi Cozy. It's very popular in Europe. And then if we go back to the bikes, they have a very poor, tainted reputation for manufacturing tolerance adherence. I mean, if you look at their website, this is their website here. These are the brands they have. So there's Doral Juvenile, Doral Sport. So I guess because this is a cycling channel, you probably want to look at those brands. So they own, well, Cannondale, Mongoose, Schwinn, GT, Charge. I don't know. I've never heard of Kid Tracks, Fabric, Guru, Calloy. Again, I've never heard of them. And they also make seats and bubble wrap. So yes, enough of that. Right. Let me go back to this. Right, fuck. Right, this frame, right, and this is the key thing. It has been sent to me by a bike shop. So a big bike shop, not a small bike shop. And they've reported a rapid bearing failure. Now, the cause of the rapid bearing failure is, we'll come to that in a second. But I mean, if you talk about the frame overall, normally I put a slide up showing there's a void here, there's a crack there, resin pooling there. I mean, this is really very good. There's no voids. No, I'll rephrase that. There's no detectable voids or ones worth worrying about. There's no internal delamination or excessive resin pooling, nothing. The NDT guy I spoke to, he said it's really very good. No debonding and good compaction everywhere. Now, one of the problems that Cannondale bikes have is inherent, I wouldn't say it's a design flaw, but it's a characteristic. So if I turn the pen on, next time we'll have the tablet for the pen. They use PF30. So PF30's got a 68mm shell, which is quite narrow. So this across here, bollocks. Fuck. Right. Yeah, across there is 68mm. So that is quite narrow. If you compare that to, I suppose, BB386 or even BB86, they're much wider, and making this the bottom bracket wider is beneficial for two reasons. The first is if you have any manufacturing deficiency, it is less noticeable. So it's easier to, I wouldn't say cover up, I mean the defect will still be there, but you're not going to get so much of a problem with it. So I've just said that. PF30 is a SRAM standard, so it uses a 46mm shell, and I put P7 tolerance in there. Capital P7, not H7 or M7. 46, and then P7 means it's actually 45.98 to 45.96, and that's what P7 means. Also, if the chap is watching, Mr. Louvet, who said my drawings were shit because I'd dated the wrong point, I've updated the drawing, so if you could give me a seal of approval in the comments, I would be very much appreciated. So I've moved the datum, and probably when I snipped this picture, I've snipped the bits that were relevant. Never mind. Not everyone's perfect. Right. So this frame, you can see the alignment is actually quite good. So between the yellow line and the orange line, they do tend to cross in the middle. This scale is slightly deceptive because of the ratios that are involved. So you have to pick a number, and it scales accordingly. And if you make it like actual 45mm instead of starting at 45, instead of starting at 45, if you start at 0, it makes it makes the lines just go over each other. So I've picked an appropriate scale, which is a millimeter expanded. I mean, the alignment is very good, but I mean, if you look around, where was I going to say? Around here and around here, there is some deviation there, and also it sort of starts to come in a bit around here on side 1. I really should label these NDS and drive side, but it's not actually that straightforward when you do it. The really bad thing about this is the non-drive side, which is actually side 2. I've labelled this, fuck. Is excessively undersized. So it is the cause of the poor bearing life. In bearing land, what you want to do is, so here's the famous cutout that John Cannings has one of these on his desk actually. You want the balls to roll, okay? Now, if you don't have any load on the bearings, okay, there's no actual pushing down load or axial load, so radial and axial load, the balls will slide. When they slide, they generate heat and then it destroys the bearing extremely quickly. That would be akin to if you were to go on your car on sheet ice and apply the accelerator and the brake. So the car would just slide and it would actually be generating heat. If you did it for long enough, from a fast enough speed, you would put 2 tracks into the ice. What you want to do is you want to have just enough load so the tyre rotates and goes along the road. If you have too much bearing clearance, if you don't have enough bearing clearance, there is not enough gap for the tyre to rotate. So it will be like you taking your Ford Fiesta, and for those in America, that is a small car, or North America, that is a small car that's very popular in Europe. If you took your Ford Fiesta and then put a load of weight on it, so much so that you had no suspension travel and the wheel arches touched the tyre, then as you drove along, what would happen is you would start to put grooves into the ice. Or if you were to imagine ice road truckers, if you've ever watched that TV show, when they go along the river, if they have too much weight on, they start to crack the ice or they put grooves in it and it just gets damaged and all sorts of problems. That is the problem with a hole that's too small. A hole that's too small is bad because your bearings will get lynched within seconds. A hole that's too big is bad because the bearing will fall out. You'd probably argue that a too small hole is better because the bearing's not going to fall out. But, I mean, in the long term, it's still shit. And then finally, it's not within tolerances. And I bang on about this because the key thing is a lot of people don't appreciate how much power they're losing by having an inefficient drivetrain. All the focus is on aerodynamic this, or EPO this, or whatever like that, you lose a lot of power through the transmission, but it's a hidden loss because you can't see it, but you can feel it. Okay, and you might attribute this to the wheels maybe the wheels are difficult to turn or something like that. So it's like that. I'm a pedantic engineer, and I mean, if this came to me, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, it's just not on really, because in the bike industry, people get away with it. If you were to do that in the car industry, and your Michelin tires wouldn't fit into the BBS wheel, sorry, the Michelin tires wouldn't fit onto the BBS rims. You know, it's just absolutely absurd. Right, summary, tip bits and the fix. Now, I haven't figured out what exactly tip bits means in America, but I've just used this, tip bits, right? So overall, the build quality on the frame is very good. Okay, but there is a standard for a frame, and the standard is 45.95 to 46, and it's well under that. You can't argue with it. So it would be a reject. Now, what you're about to see is me get this frame to within an acceptable level. So you can tweak the frame so that you can get it to work, and that's really what you want. It's not, okay, it doesn't adhere to the specification as it's supposed to, but you can ride your bike and it's not going to trash the bearings. The QA/QC for this, I'm not sure how it even passed. I mean, it only took me all of about 15 seconds to put a gauge in. Where are the gauges? It's like go, no go, go gauge. This one's actually a BB30, but it's 41.95 on that side and 42 on the other. So that should go in, and that side shouldn't. Okay, so that's how you do it. So it's only a quick fix, and that just checks to see if it is within tolerance. So, I mean, one thing I'd suggest is people go and get some of these, or go down to your local machining shop and ask them to machine you a bit of scrap off, and they'll probably charge you a couple of quid or whatever. And then you know, you can go and use this before you go and buy your new bike frame, because it's a quick fix. I mean, if you find that a hole is not accurate, then you may want to look at other parts of the bike. Right, this bearing clearance business under full load torque is about 3 watts, and that is a bucket load. Now, that 3 watts will actually diminish as you ride the bike, because it's cut a groove into the bearing race, because the balls are typically harder than the races, and you just carry on. But it'll always be worse, and you will probably always have a problem in the sense that you know, after 1,000 miles or something, the bearing will be toast. So you're gonna have to change it again. Okay, in this case, the bearing was toast from day one. So he's got 3 watts, and okay, it's going down maybe to 2.5, but the bearing's already become toast. So then he's gone back to 3, and then another 2.5. But it's also the ball ache of having to change the bearing frequently. And I guess the other thing, I mentioned this before, is it's been sent in from a bike shop. It is relatively easy to make this usable, so that's because the alignment is good, and the hole is relatively round. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's relatively round. Now, there'll be a load of Cannondale fanboys out there saying I'm hard on Cannondale. Well, I mean, you can say what you like, I'll just tell you as it is. So this is the frame I've got. Yes, in terms of build quality, it's really, really, really very good, but in terms of the tolerance of the bottom bracket, it's not acceptable, and that's from the standard that they work to, not my opinion. It's not an aero standard. Right, fixing undersized bottom bracket holes. Right, the gold standard is to machine it on a boring machine. That is easier said than done, and the reason is when you are trying to machine, let's say something like that, you can just put it in a lathe, and it's manageable. It's easy to do, it's easy to set up on, and then you can just machine away. When you're trying to machine a bike frame, it's a whole different ball game, because to hold the frame accurately is very difficult, and you've got some relative distortion in the bike frame, because the chain stays, seat stays, the head tubes and all that aren't perfectly aligned to like 0.1 millimeters. They'll be like miles off. So you're trying to hold it around the bottom bracket, because that's where you're going to perform the machining operation. That's where you want to do it. But you've got all these obstacles in the way, so it becomes difficult to hold it. And then from a mechanical point of view, the tip speed, so the cutter that comes along, and the cooling need to be well regulated, because if it's a carbon shell, epoxy tends to, even the high temperature epoxy will melt as soon as you try and machine it. So you have to cool it. So, there's that. And you've also got the possible chance of fraying fibres. So carbon fibre is a fibrous material that's had epoxy put over it, which is basically like a glue. If you go through the epoxy, then the fibres become visible, and it looks almost like a sack with the little bobbins in it, or like a cotton t-shirt with bobbins in it. So that does exist. Now the DIY method is to use a flap wheel. Now have I got a flap wheel? So I've got a picture over there of a flap wheel, or what's known as a whiffler. So one of these. Okay. You need the key thing here is you need to make sure that the whiffler is bigger than the hole you are going to try and whiffle. And generally you can go to about 0.1 millimeters. So if the hole's 0.1 millimeters undersized, you can use this technique. I mean, to be honest, you could go a bit more than that, but if I put that on this video and then people all started doing it, then I just get lambasted. Which is actually usually what happens anyway. Fuck it, just do what you want. It's good to 0.5 mil, right? Right. And then I'm giving you some free advice here. Do not do it on the following bikes, okay? Specialized. So if you've got a specialized bike with aluminium cups, so that's typically the ones with OSBB that has become BB30. In fact, it's anything with an aluminium cup. Aluminium has a tendency to gall, so it basically friction welds itself. So I don't know if you can just about see. That is galling on the end of that bottom bracket. It friction welds itself. So as you use the whiffler, you will find that as it's going round, it sort of picks up, and then it'll just literally pick up in a second. And if you've got a load of like momentum into the flat wheel, it'll just spin the cup round and out. So I certainly wouldn't recommend you did that. I really wouldn't recommend you did it with a multi-piece BB. The problem there is when you use the whiffler, oh bollocks, I put it round down. The whiffler is not a perfect tool, and you're not using a perfect method to do it. So when you put it in, the chances are that this will not be lined up in the middle. So you just cannot center it. So the misalignment will usually get worse, but the hole fit will get better in the sense that you won't have the bearing clearance problem. I've said it's impossible to center, and again, I mean, this is just talking about what could happen. So the fibre is exposed, and then when you put your bottom bracket in, you must use retaining compound, absolute must, because the hole will not be perfectly round. You'll always have some little deviation in there just because of the nature of the tool that you're using to make the hole. Right, the next bit, I can't believe I've had to do this. Because of the people that complained, and there was lots, I've had to change the famous scale that I invented in the dinner queue. So I've got a new one, and it's called Hambini Scale of Engineering Stupidity, Disorganisation and Incompetence. Now, to give you some sort of description of how good or bad these things, on this side we have good. And on this side we have bad. Now, good and bad are relative terms. So to give you a bit more information on how good or bad these things are, on the right we have good, which is the Disney princess blanket. And that is the dog's bollocks, the testicles of the dog. Der Hund Eier auf Deutsch. Right, then we have snorting milk, because as every good Frenchman like myself knows, snorting milk is the best thing since cocaine. Hambini's bottom bracket, so they are on that side of the spectrum. And then in the middle we have the area with no name and no example. Then to the left we have the slightly less good items. So trying to drain the Dead Sea with a spoon, that is a sign of incompetence. Using petrol as flame retardant, again, more stupidity. And finally, if you end up around here, you really are a fruitcake. Trying to give amoeba a vasectomy. So that is the epitome of stupidity. Yes, so that is the new scale. It will be populated on a regular basis with things. Now, the other thing that is really good is I found this new function on PowerPoint, which is how the things come in. So this is where this bike frame is coming. Wow, look at that! Did you see that? Did you see that? Can I do that again? Oh yes, that's called spiral entrance, and it made my day. Right, so the Cannondale Super 6 is in the area with no name. Obviously, it can't be in the same area as a Hambini bottom bracket because this meets tolerances. It's definitely not as good as snorting milk, so it has to stay here. It's not quite as stupid as trying to drain the Dead Sea with a spoon. So that's where it is, in the area with no name. I think that is a fair analysis. I mean, I haven't given it 4.5 stars out of 5 because I'm not a member of the cycling media. And then finally, a lot of people ask, which frames do I recommend or do I not recommend? So on the left, we have the frames that I'd suggest are okay, good. On the whole, you'd be all right with them. The ones on the right are historically not so great. So yeah, I mean, the Cervelo, that one is, the business with the tolerances on the Cervelo are quite frightening. Boardman, the issues with the warranty are quite frightening. Tifosi, don't even know. Canyon, I can't remember how bad that one was. That was bad. Now, these two, Open and Trek, they're going to be coming up soon. So you'll get an overview of that. But I mean, the Trek is an aluminium frame, so you'll see what that one's like. Right, without further ado, let me take you back to fix this frame. So if you have this situation where you've got a well-aligned bottom bracket, but it's too small, there is a way to fix this fairly easily. There is a bit of risk because if you're doing this on a multi-sided bottom bracket, you could screw up the alignment, but if you've got a one-piece bottom bracket, the chance of you screwing it up is actually quite slim. So what you need is a flat wheel or a whiffler and a Jubilee clip. So this is a 50mm flat wheel to go into a 46mm hole. Jubilee clip, what we do with the Jubilee clip is I guess this might be called a hose clip in some countries. Open it out so the flat wheel goes in. Haven't quite got enough on that. Okay, so now the flat wheel goes in. You need to move that up so it is towards the top, so you've got the bit sticking out. Then you tighten the Jubilee clip up. you'll find it doesn't go regular, but it doesn't actually matter. Okay, not quite enough. Still not enough. Okay, that should do it. There we go. Push that in, then undo the Jubilee clip. Now the purist will say this is a bodge, but I've checked this with a laser, so it usually works. Then we need a drill. Okay, once it's engaged, just literally, you only need to do, you could probably just do it by hand. Because there's hardly any material that needs to be removed. Don't go overboard with this. We only need a little bit of material off of this one. Okay, that's probably enough. So we'll get the vacuum and check it. So 45.96. Oh yeah, look at that. That's bang on now. Yeah, so now 45.96 goes in. Okay, it's a bit of a push, but it goes in. And 46, which is the bigger dimension, doesn't. So that's all you need to do. Literally only need to take fathoms out, but that is how you clean it up, and it will also get it fairly straight with a flat wheel. Okay, next part of this is we need to install the bottom bracket, so let's do that now. So it should go loose in a minute. Okay, so it's halfway in now. And time for a spot of retaining compound. Now we just finish tightening it up. And that is it. Now the drive side bearing is okay, there's nothing wrong with that. The non-drive side is the original and it's not good. So we will change it. So with the extractor, slide that in. And that's the bearing out. And now we'll put a new bearing in. Just clean this. Get it started. Yes, that's done. That bearing is as smooth as you like, so it's good to go. So the final bit in all this is to try the guy's crank out, and this is his hot Cannondale crank. It's quite badly worn on one side. I suggested he changed it, but we've got this now, so we'll try it out. Let's install it. wave washer. Not sure this is going to have enough, but we'll try and then see what happens. So we'll put this on. I think that wave washer needs probably another spacer or two. Oh no, it's alright. I think that is okay. But anyway, might need another spacer, but we'll try that. That's alright, not too bad. It's smooth now, and it's not really making any noise, so that's the main thing. And that brings us to the end of this video on this Cannondale Super 6 Evo. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more sarcasm. On a serious note, this frame is a good frame. It's well made, and the fix to fix it wasn't really that complicated. So, you know, you could buy this frame for however much it costs and fairly easily remedy it. The only concern is, you saw how quickly I remedied it, but why don't Cannondale do that in the factory rather than shipping it out and then letting all these people destroy bottom brackets in the process? Now, we'll be honest, this frame is unusual. Generally, Cannondale frames are not this good. The bottom bracket geometry is often much worse, and I've also had problems with the headset. But in this case, this has been a good frame. So thank you very much, and until next time, keep it hanging loose.